The doctors' body has decided to call off their strike. This, of course, after the Supreme Court's tough observations in the hearing today as far as the Kolkata hospital rape and murder horror is concerned. The Resident Doctors Association have said that they will resume their duties. This, of course, after the Supreme Court said that the doctors must return to work. In fact, the Supreme Court, in a strong appeal, also assured doctors that there will be no victimization and said that the poor cannot be left in the lurch. Now, remember, the resident doctors have been protesting for almost 2 weeks across India in top metropolitan cities, including in Delhi here at AIIMS, Safdarjung Hospital and many other hospitals in Delhi, and top metropolitans, including cities like Mumbai, also Lucknow, where protests have only been intensifying. But the Supreme Court came down heavily also on the Bengal government. The Supreme Court said the Bengal government has not been able to specify as to why there was a delay as far as the registration of the case is concerned. So, an important observation there. The Supreme Court also cautioned the West Bengal government, saying that there cannot be any coercive action on those protesting peacefully. Now, remember, doctors, nursing staff, paramedics and particularly resident doctors, junior doctors have been protesting on the streets of the national capital and all metropolitan cities. Their overarching demand is for a central law against or central law on violence against doctors. Now, remember, a couple of important developments have happened, including the constitution of the National Task Force, and now the Supreme Court, in fact, in today's hearing, importantly, had asked the Health Ministry to open a portal, to invite suggestions as far as the National Task Force's working is concerned. The Supreme Court has said that all stakeholders must be represented. Remember, the National Task Force, top doctors, including women doctors, have been given a place in that body. Now, remember, the Supreme Court today also said that ultimately it's a larger question of atrocities as far as doctors are concerned. Remember, the Supreme Court had said that resident doctors must return to work, because remember, we have seen that services have been impacted, particularly post-op services, in which residents play a very crucial role. They've been impacted, as doctors from across the country have been talking about. Our senior colleague Sunil Prabhu is now joining us live. So, Sunil Prabhu has been reporting on the proceedings in the Supreme Court. Sunil, it's important there that the resident doctors have now decided to call off their strike, and this after the Supreme Court made a strong appeal and also assured doctors that there will be no victimization.
That's right. Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, will be very, very pleased to hear that the resident doctors have withdrawn their strike. I think every step was taken by the Chief Justice of India to assure the doctors, one, that no coercive, no victimization. More importantly, that the health secretaries will speak to the respective chief secretary as well as DGPs to ensure security of health workers as well as doctors in government hospitals, and all steps in that direction will be taken. And now that the doctors have called off the strike, I think for the Chief Justice and his bench, after taking suo motu cognizance, they are feeling very reassured, extremely pleased and happy that its orders have been taken, and welcome by no less than the doctors themselves who are they working. As you are well aware, it's been a day of heated exchanges in the Supreme Court. One, of course, about the to and fro between the West Bengal and Kolkata police versus the CBI and the centre. No less than the Chief Justice of India having to say, please don't politicize this matter, when there were barbs against when the Solicitor General said that a minister said that anybody who speaks against our leader will be chopped off, for which Mr. Sibal retorted saying that the leader of opposition is talking about acid bombs and hitting with bullets. Finally, the Chief Justice of India saying, please don't politicize it. I think from this morning, Chief Justice of India making it clear that we can't allow the poorest of the poor to be left in the lurch. That if you delay an operation or a medical, it goes back by days, if not years, and that is something which is a great amount of concern for them, and that is why they wanted doctors to resume. So they'll be very pleased with this aspect that has taken place, and let's wait and see how the investigation goes on. The Chief Justice as well as the Supreme Court have directed the additional Chief Judicial Magistrate to report and give its clearance for a polygraphy test of the accused, as well as various other things to be done by tomorrow. And they will take a status update on the 5th of September before, hopefully, as he says, a fast and efficient way of dealing with this entire issue.
Yes, and also one of the concerns as far as the resident doctors are concerned was that there is no adequate representation in the National Task Force that has now been constituted by the Supreme Court. Many resident doctors say that, the junior level doctors as well as the nursing staff should also be made a part in some sense of the National Task Force. So how is the Supreme Court plan to address that? Because today, of course, the Supreme Court has also asked for this portal to be opened. So that's a welcome step as well.
Well, one, of course, as you rightly pointed out, a portal, but for the resident doctors, they can't put them on the panel of the National Task Force. This is a very high-level committee with top directors and, doctors on the board. What they have asked them is to definitely ensure that various stakeholders, not only resident doctors, anybody concerning with the health workers, you saw a lot of presentations being given on this about how there has been a really lack of implementation. Because this is not something that is new. Attack on health workers or the horrific incident that has happened and which has created a public outrage in Kolkata is not the first. There have been many incidents earlier and not many of them have been able to fast track. So the Chief Justice of India has asked the National Task Force to speak to all various stakeholders and hopefully address their concerns, apart of course from that portal which will be put up by the Health Ministry, by the Health Secretary to be able to get
former director of AIIMS, is joining us live on the phone line. Mr. Guleria, Dr. Guleria, thanks very much for being with us. The doctors' body has decided to call off the strike. This, of course, after the Supreme Court, in a sense, made a very impassioned appeal and assured doctors as well that there will be no victimization. What was the thinking behind calling off the strike?
So first of all, I would like to really say that it's good that the doctors have called off their strike because a lot of patients were suffering. But at the same time, I think it's very important that their movement and what they wanted is not sort of left behind. Their demands are really justified, and there is a need for us to really look at it in a serious manner. I think the Honorable Chief Justice of India and the Supreme Court has assured them of that. Keeping that in mind, I think it's a good move that they have withdrawn the strike and have given full faith on the what the Supreme Court is going to do.
Dr. Guleria, what is the National Task Force's plan of action now? Because, of course, the overarching demand was for a central law on violence against doctors. But in which direction is a National Task Force now planning to work?
So I think the mandate of the National Task Force has been clearly given by the Supreme Court in its decision, and they would follow that mandate. They need to also talk to all stakeholders, and I'm sure that they will come out with a very comprehensive document which will help to resolve this issue in a sustainable manner, and which will also address all the issues which are both in government hospitals, in state hospitals, and in the private sector also.
All right, and Dr. Guleria, the resident doctors, in fact, had raised this concern that there is no adequate representation of junior level doctors in the National Task Force. Of course, the Supreme Court said that it's not perhaps a plausible or reasonable proposition to put junior level doctors on the National Task Force. But do you think that this body will be able to reinstate the faith in junior doctors who feel that they will not be represented adequately as far as this Central Task Force is concerned?
Yes, but the task force can take opinions from stakeholders, which includes the junior doctors. We must remember that junior doctors is a moving population. They are residents for a short duration, 3 years, 6 years, and they move on. So there has to be people who have seen the evolution of the whole process, and that is why I think members of the task force are those who have seen, are senior people who have seen how the residency program has evolved. And therefore, they can take advice and consult all stakeholders, but they are probably better positioned in being able to develop a long-term strategy.
And Dr. Valeria, as somebody who has headed AIIMS and somebody who's been in the profession for so long, do you think there's going to be consensus as far as various resident doctor bodies are concerned? Because we had seen, a couple of days back, the FODA had called off the strike, but there seemed to have been some sort of miscommunication. Various state resident doctors said that this has not been done in wider consultation, and they continue to protest. Do you think this time around there will be wider consensus on calling off the strike?
I think with the appeal that the Supreme Court has made, it is quite likely that there will be wider consensus, and doctors would want to wait and see what the task force comments are and how they are implemented. So I think this is a time to sort of give an opportunity for policymakers and the Supreme Court to implement what the doctors have been demanding, and to see that this is done in a proper manner. If it's not done, then there are other issues that will come up in the near future.